Did Kirito and Asuna get married? Who's the Star King and who's the Star Queen? So what's up guys, Foxen here. SAO Alicization, War of the Underworld episode 22 just gave you a 200-year gap. That's a juicy question, what happened? So let's go ahead and go over what we do know. Go ahead and smash that like, just like how Asuna smashed Kirito during this little vacation. Plus ding the bell. Keep in mind this is just a super quick video, nothing too fancy. If you do have any questions, post below, but I do ask you to watch the full video first. There's a good chance your question got answered. Naturally, there are spoilers, including some highlights from Kirito, which I do highly recommend reading. You could read them right now from today's sponsor, Bookwalker. Kirito is a short SAO arc covered in SAO volumes 19 and 20. Be sure to use my coupon Foxen to get a sweet $5 discount. Getting into it, first off, setting expectations. Are you going to find out what happened in those 200 years? The short answer is only small bits. You're gonna see why. The Underworld, going at 5 million times the speed, had 200 years pass by, only 20 minutes in real life. For the actual Kirito story, this takes place a year and 3 months after the Underworld War, which would be 8 seconds in real life. Asuna was actually thinking that their brains would simply burn out someday. The actual Kirito story reminds me a lot of the murder mystery back in SAO, and I do mean the light novel version, not the abridged anime one. Kirito is best seen as Roni's story, with Asuna, Kirito, and Tisei mixed in. There really are two main ongoing issues in Kirito. The first is the actual murder mystery. The gist of it is that a human empire citizen got killed by a goblin from the Dark Territory side. The actual reality was that the guy just got framed for murder. The story now has a mixture of Kirito, Asuna, Roni, and Tisei, who are now trying to figure out this mystery. Second issue, really the aftermath of the War of the Underworld. It turns out things are not all sunshine and rainbows. Things are peaceful now, but there is a possibility of another war coming soon. This is really just due to there not being enough resources to go around. In the Dark Territory side, killing has been outlawed, but now you have a lot of Dark Territory people jobless, and some populations are booming elsewhere. Unfortunately, most of the land in the Dark Territory side remains largely unusable. That's even with Kirito and Asuna's efforts to change this. Anyway, getting to the juicy stuff, while you're here, Asuna and Kirito stuff. Did Kirito and Asuna ever get married? If the king and queen title didn't already give it away, yes. In the actual Kirito story, Roni mentions that perhaps not long from now, both of them would have a wedding. But really, whether it's official or not, Asuna and Kirito have pretty much been like a married couple since SAO. Next question, did Asuna and Kirito do the dati? For this one, you already know they did it back in SAO. A lot more in fact than the anime showed you. Let's just say that both of these lovebirds had enough time to experiment over these 200 years. Hashtag bunny time. Did Kirito and Asuna ever get any children? I was actually curious as to whether both of them could even have a kid together. In the SAO light novels, Cardinal did joke around with Kirito, telling him there were plenty of light cubes open if he wanted to make a Kirito Jr. So in theory it should be possible. On the other hand, doing so just seems honestly irresponsible. I could really see Asuna and Kirito thinking the same. If you think about it, if they had a kid, both of their parents would have outlived them. Or equally as bad, they never knew when they could actually wake up, which meant there was a risk of leaving their kid behind. So sorry Yui, you're gonna have to wait a bit. Mommy and daddy will get busy later. Next up, what was the deal with the Star Queen and Star King? You know that Asuna was seen as the literal goddess Stacia herself. After the war, people just saw her as a reincarnation of her. You know, both of them were part of the Human Unification Council. By the time that Kirito managed to get past the wall at the end of the world, the guy already had the king title. Naturally, Asuna would have also been queen. In Kirito, there are no kings or queens yet. So my quick thoughts or theory, really that Asuna and Kirito took the position after getting married. The imperial family and noble system got wiped out, so something eventually needed to come and replace it. In Kirito, thankfully you do get some alone time between both of them. Of course, they think back to Yui and their friends outside, plus you also get a few fun callbacks to their time together in SAO Progressive. In general, since staying in the Underworld, Asuna and Kirito dedicated their lives to help improve the Underworld. One example was this dragon craft or metal plane that Kirito was developing, really taking an inspiration from Kayaba. But you might be wondering, why not just use sacred arts or a regular dragon? It turns out Kirito wasn't just trying to be extra. Kirito was trying to find a way past the end wall at the end of the Dark Territory. Even with his incarnation, it was impossible. His theory was that human units were not allowed to pass. But how about if you encased yourself in something metal like this craft? In Kirito, you actually get to see Kirito testing out the so-called Steel Dragon for the first time. Spoiler, it was a complete failure. Instead of flying, the human empire got some free fireworks that day. Special thanks to Asuna too for moving the tower out of the way. Next question, did Asuna and Kirito age? Perhaps the same day as Quinella, both of them stopped aging. Honestly, I wasn't actually sure when they stopped aging, but in the latest SAO episode, they showed you visually this young Kirito. Mentally, the guy should have been at Bercoli level. How did Asuna and Kirito survive for 200 years? Wasn't the limit much shorter? Keep in mind the theoretical limit was 150 years. It could have been more, it could have been less. They technically did not survive 200 years. At least going by the official Underworld records, they disappeared 30 years ago. I'm going to assume they probably didn't edit their memories or floodlight. It just seemed too dangerous. Or if they did, it was super minimal. Next up, what happened to the rest of the Underworld during that time? First off, for the Dark Territory side, first order of business. Yuskan was now seen as the strongest on the Dark Territory side. This guy took over as commander. Thankfully, the royal power was still in play. Sheta decided to stay with him to serve as ambassador for the Human Empire. Both of them lived together in the Obsidian Castle. Sheta actually decided to remain swordless going forward. On the Dark Territory side, she actually had her own training hall in the Dark Knight headquarters and even got some pupils. And yes, both of these two did get frisky. Whoops, baby time. The little munchkin was named Lizetta after goddess Lifa. Cause really, Lifa was the only reason they actually survived the war. In all, it was peaceful times between the Human Empire and Dark Territory side. The eastern gates were open for trade and travel. For other Dark Territory stuff, the Assassin's Guild was disbanded. For the Dark Mages, most of the senior members mysteriously disappeared. The former rank like 10 was put in charge. For the ruling power on the Dark Territory side, this was a council of 5, including Iskan. For the Human Empire, they had the Human Unification Council, and Asuna and Kirito were a part of this. Next up, Integrity Knights. Finatio officially became the new commander. And yes, she had a little adorable baby. What a cute little Hercules. Keep in mind that Birch was not immortal, which meant that Finatio would eventually face the loss of her son. In general, this was really true for any new Integrity Knight going forward. They would eventually come and go. For Lizzo and Finno, they got promoted to full Integrity Knights. They even got dragons. In Moon Cradle, you do get to see 2 other Integrity Knights, Enki and Negio. For one of these guys, did Bercoli secretly have a son? Unfortunately, 7 other knights were still under deep freeze. Thanks a lot, Quinella. At this point in time, they had no idea how to undo it. For more juicy bits about the knights, definitely check out my full Integrity Knight video. That includes some Moon Cradle stuff. Next up, best buddies Roni and Tisei. Both of these got promoted to apprentice Integrity Knights, complete with baby dragons. In Moon Cradle, Roni actually got the Moonbeam Sword, and Tisei was given the Blue Rose Sword by Kirito. Reiki mentioned that someday, Tisei was sure to hear Yujio's voice again. Tisei eventually did get hooked up with Renly, which you should have seen throughout SAO Alicization, but unfortunately the anime cut out pretty much all of it. Little Roni, on the other hand, was getting a ton of marriage proposals. Fast forward 200 years, you do get to meet Roni's descendant, Laura. You never actually do get to find out who Roni married, but she eventually did find someone. For Tisei's descendant, that was Thesia. Both of their descendants were now Integrity pilots flying in space in their metal dragons. You should see this in the final SAO episode. For other people, you have Selka. She actually comes to the tower to become an apprentice at the end of Moon Cradle. You later find out she eventually got put under deep freeze. Just going based on the picture, this should have been fairly soon after getting to the tower. Oh, and don't forget about Frenica. She also came around the same time with Selka to the cathedral. For Lina Senpai, she got promoted to General Lina Senpai. For Elevator Girl, now relieved of duty. Just call her Eri. She got a new career in recognition for her excellent skill in wind arts. If you are going into the Moon Cradle story, you do need to know this. By the end of the 2 light novels, there still are unresolved issues, and not to mention questions. The story covered only takes place over a few days, which is a tiny fragment in the 200-year gap. Still, I would recommend Moon Cradle to any SAO fan. SAO Light Novel 19 and 20 are available right now at Bookwalker. Be sure to use my code Foxen to get your first one for a few dollars, link below. Alright, going past the Moon Cradle story, what happened in those 200 years? First off, the sad reality. Pretty much everyone is dead by the time that Kirito and Asuna exit. They're way past their limit of their floodlight. Keep in mind, even Integrity Knights who were seemingly immortal only survived due to Quinella's fine-tuning of their floodlight. As far as you know, the only person left during that 200-year gap is Selka. But personally, I do have a feeling that Reiki may open the door for others surviving somehow. Whether that's them being frozen or them wiping their floodlight like Quinella had done. Going forward, King Kirito and Queen Asuna continued to dedicate their lives to improving the Underworld. Part of this included battling the Dark Emperors that continued for another 100 years. Between this time, Kirito eventually succeeded in using the dragon craft to get past the end of the wall. They would have negotiated and sometimes battled some ancient god beasts. This allowed them to get some fertile land for the Dark Territory people to expand on. Their planet went on to be named Cardina. Eventually they went on to explore the entire planet. After that, the next adventure, space. When did this become trigger? The dragon craft was further improved so it could go into space. They eventually found a companion planet and named it Admina. So you got Cardina and Admina, two sister planets. After establishing the first colony city on Admina, Kirito was urged to take the role as the Underworld's first Star King. Naturally, that included the Star Queen too. Eventually, the Integrity Knights became Integrity Pilots, more like space pilots. The biggest threat to them was this high-density, dark element monster in space. It was known as the Abyss Horror. Eventually, they just ended up fighting against it. The Star King tried to destroy it, but part of it always got away and recovered. You should see this mystical space beast in the final episode. 30 years ago, the Star King and Queen vanished. They were thought to be dead. That would have been around 170 years after the war. Before vanishing, they left a prophecy. One day, the gates to the real world would open again. When it does, a great upheaval will come to both worlds. Next up, Kayaba and Yui. I kept on seeing this comment-related question. Did either of them go into the Underworld during the 200 years? For Yui, keep in mind she couldn't even go into the Underworld at 1 speed. On top of this, the 200 years was only 20 minutes in real life. For Kayaba, the dude was busy playing Discount Iron Man. Rinko believed that was his very being, not a copy, which meant Kayaba definitely didn't have any time to try anything. Even after his escape, the robot was left at the bottom of the ocean until rescued. I should also mention, even if Kayaba didn't have his hands full, I highly doubt he could actually get into the Underworld when it's going at 5 million times the speed. Next up, Vasago. The guy got turned into morning wood. He was described as having white hair, but sleeping peacefully in the SAO light novels. For the SAO anime, he just looked dead. But Kirito never actually verified he was, and you now know Vasago used an escape rope. I'm actually really glad the guy's still around. The only thing I can guarantee you is that Vasago will eventually return, most likely in SAO Unito Ring. As for how Vasago even survived, you could bet that's gonna get explained when he does return. I got a feeling that being a tree might have been a key for that. Next up, Alice in the real world. I kept on seeing people confused about this, but Alice in the real world is in a robot. She's really just been reversed isekai. Alice also became a kitty in Alphen Online. Best way to one day become a dragon tamer. Oh, and keep in mind, Alice's eggs did not get converted. You're gonna see the eggs again one day when Alice logs back into the Underworld. Next up, 200-year-old Kirito. Technically more like 170. Does this guy get brought up again? So far, yes. It does seem Kayaba is talking to Star King Kirito in the Unito Ring prologue. It was very brief. The first English volume of Unito Ring should come out next year. And now for the big one. Will Reki ever cover more of the 200-year timeline? Reki has said he does want to, which would include expanding what already started in Moon Cradle. Whether he actually gets to it is a completely different question. The dude is working on so many things. SAO Unito Ring, SAO Progressive, Excel World, The Isolator. And that's not even talking about how much work Reki is doing in other things, like helping with the SAO anime, or any of the various games related to SAO or other properties. Realistically, unfortunately, I don't see Moon Cradle getting a sequel anytime soon. Perhaps you may see a few short stories within the timeline. My own greedy wish is for Reki to work on SAO exclusively full time. Does this mean you won't find out anything else? I did talk about this in my episode review, how the memories were actually blocked instead of actually getting deleted, which means I am expecting this stuff to come back into play. Kirito and Asuna will eventually log back into the Underworld in Unito Ring, so you'll gradually get more info there. The Star King Kirito is also still around. That dude knows everything that happened, which means there's always a possibility for him to present some events. But anyway, hopefully this answered everything. If you do got a question, ask below. I'll try to get back to you. Subscribe for more anime videos like this one. Watch my new Kirito video. That was way more in depth than this one. And I'll see you guys later.